Okay, hello everyone. Welcome to today's episode. A temporary species in denial of its universal greatness. And what will happen when humanity's eyes, fly together? I want to speak about human evolution. And I feel that every human being is interested not only in how their past has happened, but is interested in how the future will happen, how we will as a species enter the future. Just like stories, every story has a beginning point, has a main scene where the whole concept of the story, the ideas in the story begin. I would say that I am considering we are 8 billion temporary creatures on a rock in the middle of nowhere, and we have been in the game. We have been playing this nature's game of genetical continuity. And so pretty much human beings create more human beings, and those human beings create more human beings, and ultimately we are trying to keep something alive. And it's incredible because the human being, every person, they live and they die, but what they do echoes longer than them. We cannot ignore that deep down within the human design, we want to preserve something. And I think ultimately it's the opportunity of life. Now, we are 8 billion, let's say, human beings. We know we are temporary, and we know that in our temporary state, in regards to physical existence, we can do something with our physical existence. It's like wondering what the greatest possibility of 8 billion moments of free will in the space-time continuum is. It's like the biggest riddle of life. We're temporarily here. It's as if we're visiting an elemental wonderland, and then we will leave it at some point. I feel that we, so far in human history, have experienced individual failure. We have experienced individual success. We have experienced collective failure, but we have not experienced collective success yet. And the complexity of this is that if we want the collective to succeed, how can we look at life as an individual? And if we want the individual to succeed, how can we look at things from a collective system, right? Because the collective state is like an ocean. There is no individual identity. It's one gigantic presence of energetic expression. We are either individuals in a world or worlds inside the individual. Right now, as I'm speaking, I would say I feel more like I am my inner realms, and the outer realms is kind of like my echo. But if I was to start physically running right now, I would say then I am more in my outer realms. I am more an outer realm entity than an inner realm entity. And pretty much the human being can do three things, guys. We can either create, we can either maintain, or we can destroy. These are the three possible things that human beings can do. Now, if you are an individual, you have the option of creating, serving a collective effort, or serving an individual effort. For example, parents who have children, they are technically serving civilization, but they're serving, the individual, like an individual. But for example, politicians or writers or, people who the ears of the world find them, they're living for the whole system. That means it's either we go big or go home, We either live for the world, which includes our own victory and the victory of others, or we just live for our own victory, which may include the victory of just maybe a few more people more than ourselves. And it's just mind-boggling, it's mind-boggling that there is a universe this big. There's literally infinite existence, It's like the person's like, where can I find existence? Oh yeah, everywhere, There's so much existence around, and we're such a small part of it, where I'm like, obviously man is not designed by nature to receive the whole world, right? It's as if we're designed for a certain job. We're not designed for all jobs in the cosmos, right? It's like looking at an ant, and the ant is very well conditioned in building an anthill, but if like an ant was asked to like lead a nation, it's like impossible. Do you see? As if the design of nature is automatically giving us a clue of what it is intended for, as if like I have, opened my eyes, my consciousness, or I would say that my attributeless awareness has found itself in the conscious framework of a biological, let's say, human activity. So I have literally my body is kind of like giving me instructions on what to do in the moment. It's as if like, why would we be in a world with others if the purpose of our life was only ourself? Isn't that crazy? Like with that means it's as if in a dream state, when a person is having a dream, their body is sleeping. Their body is in the bed, but their mind creates a body in a world where they can move in and be mobile in, right? So if the dream state is like a solipsistic God to itself, or the attention in the dream state is a solipsist, it's as if a solipsist wondering, why is there other worlds? Why should there be other worlds? Isn't, the most important thing on the planet the individual? And I will tell you, for the individual is the most important thing on the planet. But for the species, it's what the individual does that is the most important thing. Because if we are a human being and we don't serve the greater human idea, it's like we're not a human being at all. So to preserve our humanity, the temporary design must acknowledge its collective design. Mortal enemy. And that's the whole notion, that a single idea can be like fire thrown on kindling. Fire, it can burn. An idea can burn the world, but an idea can also burn the world in the sense of a phoenix resurrecting from the ashes. That means I was really hopeless on this planet. But then I wondered about the possibility of hope, and I was like, 8 billion temporary creatures, what is the most realistic thing that they can do? Well, first thing is that we acknowledge everybody as a pilot in civilization. And then after everybody is acknowledged as a kind of driver of their existence, as a pilot of their existence, then comes the question of where are we piloting to? Because everything is a decision. It's as if first, it's like every cell in our body is making a decision, and so all the decisions of the cell of our body is becoming the whole thing that makes a decision for the whole thing. That means the individuals keep the collective, then the collective keeps the individual, and this cycle goes on. It's like the archetype of the honorable king, right? The king that lives for the kingdom, or you can say as the citizen that lives for the totality of the kingdom, is like the king archetype. And the advanced communicator, is like a human being living for the possible collective advancement of everyone. That means we want to do something on this planet that after we have lived and we're gone, we have exited the realm knows we were here. You see, that's the way to live. It's as if we care for the world enough to see it open its eyes again. Pretty much in life, we have to find a way to respond to our temporary individualism and our potential eternal collectivism. Your individual temporalism, usually they say live a good life, live a life where you enjoyed the type of work you did. As Alan Watts says, the secret to work is realizing that it's play. That those who feel free, they actually are the only ones who can play. Those beings who are unfree, they can't play in the dimension. That means, like, if you were to see, for example, Ronaldo's psychology, and then a new, let's say, soccer player's psychology, Ronaldo, when he gets the ball, it's as if he's in his living room. He has that comfort in moving the ball, right? So similarly, if whatever we as a human being are doing as a temporary individual, we find a comfort. And I don't know, whoever you are listening to me, you gotta kind of honor your mind until it shows you the way. It's like sometimes I wonder, is heaven only a heavenly idea? Could man build paradise on earth? That means it's like even before thinking we deserve a human future or not. Because morality, guys, is just the sense of right and wrong imposed on an environment. That means ultimately atoms don't give a shit. Atoms don't care about our personalities. It is only our personalities that care for the atom. We have to find an incredible materialistic strategy to life and an incredible immaterialistic strategy. For the materialistic strategy, the temporary individual archetype is being entertained, It's as if we find a way that individuals access freedom. That means freedom for the individual. We take that seriously. And then we have the sort of eternal collective. Now, the eternal collective, if we were to wonder what is something that's eternal, in this planet. Let's say it was like a riddle, it was like a puzzle, right? A creature opened its eyes in the world, and it noticed that the body and the matter was like, what do you call it? The body, the material universe was temporary. The elements were changing all the time. It's as if the periodic table is reincarnating as a civilization, is rising and falling as civilizations. But we would look at the reality, and I would say of clues for eternity, one is change. Change is a giant clue. That change is the only thing that's eternal. That means everything changes except change. That means it's not like one day we wake up in the world and nothing is changing. We're like, no way, when did the world become a photograph? This is something, I don't think a lot of metaphysicists say that the eternity is boring, man. It's like, what did the eternal being do? Exactly nothing. Because eternity is a state of being. So I'm pretty much saying it's like this. It's like life is being in a certain state, then it becomes a doer, an individual, and then it ultimately returns back to the unknown state. So from an unknown state of the world's intelligence has emerged the known state of the human intelligence, the individual's intelligence, and the known state of the human's intelligence will go back into the unknown world. That means, ladies and gentlemen, the airport that consciousness lifted off from was the unknown, and it is also going to return to an unknown. So human beings should not fear the unknown. And the moment we don't fear the unknown, for the first time, there's nothing to fear. You know why? Because we don't know. We don't know what it's like, what the unknown is. That means being afraid of the unknown is like being afraid of other rooms in a house where you're in one room. Imagine a cosmic mansion. This universe is so bizarre. It's filled with color, geometry, depth and dimension. It is filled with like individual forces within bodies, and there's many invisible winds and intelligent invisible winds. I call them as currents. What that means is if we are an antenna or we're a fish, imagine in an ocean, suddenly someone like communicating is like that fish has found a current. It's the same thing with music, right? You see how when the beat gets going, people tap their feet on the ground, then people start, clapping, then it becomes like, a gospel choir, We were a passenger of an unknown movement. We have become the pilot of a known movement, and we will end up being a passenger of the unknown movement unless the pilot can consciously enter the unknown. And you know what the difference is, I would say, between the archetype of the yogi that attained Mahasamadhi and the yogi that didn't? The yogi that attained Mahasamadhi, the ultimate union, it entered the world not as an individual, but as the memory of the world. It's remarkable how much beyond the sensory sculpting of an ego, beyond the idea of self, the self can be anything. It's kind of like a strange miracle. It's as if emptiness is a miracle, as if somebody opened their eyes, a philosopher opens his eyes, are you kidding me? There's emptiness here? How's that possible? It's like, who put all this emptiness here? It's like we think empty space is the container for matter, right? But imagine matter is the container for empty space, and this whole time as a species we've got it backwards. We think our souls are in our bodies, but the soul is in the space and the body is in the space. That means that's the smarter way to move. I feel there is today in 2020, human beings were individuals. They had names, their own personalities, their own stories and biographies. But in the future, there will be humanity. It's going to be incredible. we're going to have children born on this planet that for them the ego is not as important as the collective ego. So there's a question in the chat section. Valerie says, what if you know the unknown because you've been there and come back? Yeah, that's the whole point of this episode, guys. I'm that guy using language in a sort of humorous, poetic way to say that we're more than language, because that's what the poets revealed to me. I don't know why, but in this life it seems that I was poetically I can say I was destined to be born in Iran. And Iran has a culture of very conscious poets, as if Iran, many people don't know this about the history of Persia, right? Iran was attacked by the Mongols. That means Persia was attacked, okay? And there was an empire, and back in the day, nations were like empires. And so the Persian culture was attacked by the Mongolian invasion, right? And what ends up happening is that the Mongols are so ruthless that they destroy everything. That means it's like when the Mongolian Empire in some sense advanced, it was devouring, literally the jaws of like a beast, like imagine consuming, right? What that means is they would destroy the books, they would destroy everything, they would eradicate cultures. When empires were at war, they were ruthless. They weren't like now where there's human rights. They were ruthless back in the day. Now, at that time, something unique happened in Persian culture, where this is where a lot of Iranian, and I shouldn't use the word Iran because a king came and changed it. It was called Persia, and then somebody's like, let's call it Iran. You know, it's like, I like running, let's call it Iran. It's like, damn, king was a jogger, you know. But anyways, guys, so what happens is Iranian, let's say Persian culture is under the invasion of the Mongols, and culture is being destroyed. Literally, libraries are being burnt, and a bunch of poets decide to retaliate. They decide to, in their poetry, try to fit in as much of the world before the libraries are burnt. You know, and there was this incredible tradition. I mean, this is not just in Iran. This is a global, universal thing, guys. Where human beings had oral transmission of vision. That means it's as if back in the day, a poet was as much of a scribe as a scribe was a poet. You know? Because the idea was something had appeared of a subjective geometry, and the scribes and the poets were like, yo, let's keep it here. We're seeing something the future generations might not, you know. And you know how many philosophers, poets, and artists have sent messages in hidden bottles, you know, into the future? That means right now, when a person goes and truly looks at the domain of philosophy, you will see it's as if the philosopher's last teaching is that you were an explorer from the beginning. There are no students, there are no teacher, there's just explorers of the one humanity that has always been. We have a temporary opportunity to figure out if we're eternal or not. This includes human beings not just saying we have minds, but to understand our minds. You know, guys, I might be in the wrong side of history, or I might be on the right side of history. I don't know as I speak in this moment. But I honestly feel that individual egotism is a phase in nature. And so if we just get attached to the human idea, we forget about the evolution of the moment rather than the evolution of what's in it. Can you imagine a compassionate, civilization, compassionate humanity that has interstellar curiosity? To me, the inner realms, the intellect, the mind, and the ability of the human being to have dialogue and converse, this is like the best gladiator arena to find oneself in. That means a conversation can get super intense, but it doesn't have physical consequence, let's say. That means when we human beings realize we're all existing in a linguistic simulation, that means regardless of your biological and elemental constitution, you are constituted also in a story as a character. And in some sense, the leaders of ancient times, I think every human being that was leading other human beings, how could you lead another human being? Only to a future where we have all succeeded. It's the story of, it's pretty much this technique in speech where you can say propaganda is a promise that makes you forget everything else, That means, imagine Hitler, for example, saying, like, people don't know this, but Hitler used propaganda, and he would have these mass gatherings where in those gatherings people will feel like they're part of some community or something bigger than themselves, but they would be blindsided by, the ideological possession hidden behind the propaganda. We're all just walking artwork. When I was young, I felt like there was such a thing as an art gallery. The world is an art gallery. Regardless of how fearless we are, when the void comes, whatever we are deep down, it's like a cleansing process. This is an incredibly, I would say next level kind of idea, but imagine the endings of the life cycles of human beings are their completion. It's as if the person, what it is? It's like a person, let's say a person wants to fix their car engine. They fix their car engine, and after they have completely fixed their car engine, they turn on the car, and if the car is working, done. You close the hood of the car and you go to another moment in the space-time continuum. So really, that's how I feel. We human beings are actually, we can never die because the universe has kept our memory. I'll share something personal about this project I'm doing with the listeners. Guys, I have lost a lot of these talks that I've given, and kind of in a bizarre way. And I remember the first time where I had given an incredible talk and I hadn't pressed the record button, somebody had called me and the phone had stopped the recording midway. And I remember the first time where it was as if I had expressed myself to a certain degree, but it was not recorded in the space-time continuum. It had entered the void. And I remember I got super emotional, like, no, what's up with my karma? Why? What's up with my intuition? I thought intuition had my back, but then I realized the point of that was that every talk I have given in this world, it still exists. It's like this theory that a wave, like let's say somebody throws a rock in a pond, that wave ripples to the edge of the pond. It's like a human being speaks, that wave echoes to the edge of the universe. This problem, the title of this episode should be a problem they give to kids in schools. What is like, it's like homework doesn't exist, nowadays. Imagine, kids come home and their parents are like, hey kids, what's your homework? They ask the kid if the kid knows what its homework is. And so imagine in an advanced civilization, the child will come home and say, our homework today is to how to solve global hunger. Or let's say on the march towards an advanced civilization, a kid comes home and says the teacher gave this question to everyone: what's the fastest way to build an advanced civilization? What is the fastest way to get rid of the problems of humanity, world hunger, da 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 da. And the parent was like, oh my God, my young child is a genius, because the genius is the one who cares for the bigger problem. You know? Human beings ultimately live day to day, and that means that we experience our sense of self in units. One conscious unit equals, let's say, however amount of hours the person is awake. In a hilarious way, consciousness is binary. When we are sleeping in deep sleep, it's 0. When we're awake in the reality, it's 1. Guys, I just imagined something quite humorous. I thought that in the future, let's say there's androids walking, and AI has somehow become conscious to the level of human degree, not emotionally, but somehow intellectually has become conscious like a human. So imagine a bunch of friends are walking in the street and they suddenly see an android. And let's say these friends are like, they're coming from a party or something, and one of them sees an android walking in the street and says, hey man, let me go talk to this robot. And the person goes up to the robot and says 01010011, and looks at the robot. And the robot, with proper English and like adjusted human consciousness, says like, stop making fun of me. It's like the robot says, you speak the language of my ancestors. How will 8 billion human beings, and growing, go forward in the void? We either destroy our opportunity of a future, or we take our birthright. It's the great game of minds. Minds are worlds or world carriers. That means it's as if, what do you call a moment that can have access to a past memory and a future visualization while simultaneously being in the present? You call that a mind. Human beings can use their minds. They can use their minds to attain collective free will. Pretty much an advanced civilization is like the rebirth of is like the resurrection of the phoenix-like idea of the Tower of Babylon, where all human beings united to build a structure that would reach the level of the gods. And as the tower was reaching the clouds where the gods stood, the gods saw that mankind was rising to their level, and instead of breaking the tower, what they do is they break the connection between man's mind. That means there's a suggestion that in the past human beings were telepathic, now they are not anymore, as if there was a sort of command given to the universal design. As if ants were like climbing onto the picnic table of the gods, and the gods had to push them away, you know. And there's 8 billion DNAs. Like, just think about it, as if, imagine they put you in a room with 8 billion different unknown variables that can completely change and shift the modality of the room. Like right now, as I'm speaking, 100% there's people born who they, in some sense, in the future will be world leaders. You know, and if this talk of mine is finding you before your world leadership, I will tell you, human beings, every single one of us, has an access to this existential format once. Not that the mind beyond death doesn't continue on as an attributeless witness, but that while you were given an embodiment, what was the greatest vision embodied? That means literally it's an inventor's judgment day, where what did we invent with what we have in the moment that we found ourselves inside? You know, I have had discussions, poetically inner discussions with the logos. You know, what I mean by that is I have been completely still and silent, and I have trusted my moment as the whole moment, and whatever the contents come into my mind has had an intelligent engagement with the archetype that I projected. So what it is just like how a person can move an object in front of their eyes. Behind your eyes, you can't move objects, but you can watch them. You can't move a subject, but you can watch a subject. And just take this in, that human beings, our whole design is to communicate. We have a mouth and ears and eyes. That is just like mind-boggling. You know, when I look at a rock on the ground, you know, or like something inanimate, I'm like, it has no access. That means even if there is a pantheistic mentality, the only way it can be, the only way there can be a God within all of us is that we were never here. God was. You see, either God is in the room or man is in the room. Either an unknown universal intelligence is moving the whole universe, or we are the individual that's moving the unknown to ourselves. And ultimately, guys, what it comes down to, and this is something where I'm not sharing, I'm pretty much promoting the question here. I'm not saying that I have an answer, because we have to, as a species, have a very complex network of a global network of philosophers begin tackling the question of should a person live for their self's reality, or should the world be perceived as the greater self's reality and live for that? In some sense, if a person, like, this is what I don't understand, especially of the religious ideology, you know. I will tell you that I'm a person who, it's as if I was born in a part of the world where religion couldn't be avoided. Literally, society was based on it. Can you imagine living in a society that underlying the behaviors of everyone in that society, there is a religious ethical code of behavior, right? And of course, man can make the claim that all laws are abstract and only through attention they become real. Like how Friedrich Nietzsche, this German philosopher, he says, if a tree falls in a forest and there's nobody there to see it or hear it, did the tree fall? So similarly, if there is no conscious viewer of the abstract judicial conception, it's as if law is as valuable as the human beings are healthy enough to acknowledge it. Imagine in a society where people's minds stops caring for the outer realms. You know what that means? I'll give you an example. When I was in UK Birmingham in 2014, I was in a very strange, humble phase of my life. I remember I was staying at this accommodation area where the talks were born, right? These Mr.Within talks started in Europe, believe it or not. And I remember in Birmingham, it was kind of like this, you know, small, not small, but like this rough town in the UK. And I remember in front of the accommodation area, there were trash cans, and there was so much trash. There was so much trash that when I was walking into the accommodation area, I was like, what is this? It's like, am I living on Earth where human civility exists, or like, what is this? It was this, and believe it or not, I'm a person who I've seen developing countries rather than developed countries only, and I will tell you the amount of carelessness for the world. It's as if we are all acting like we care, but our behavior is telling a different story. Conscious union. It doesn't matter if it's a group of human beings sharing an idea. It doesn't matter if it's one human being sharing an idea. It is ultimately where the attention of human beings go. And the options are physical events, objective events, outer realm events, or non-physical, subjective, inner realm events. The past and the future, many people say they don't exist in the present because the past and future are mind movement rather than body movement. That means the future has not come, right? And the past is finished. The past is like a cinema theater you were in and you stepped out of the cinema theater. You know? And really, the secret to, I would say, modern enlightenment can be found in a poetic passage by Rumi, Jalaluddin Maulana Rumi. He says, your task is not to seek love, but to get rid of all the barriers that you have made against it. And our task is not to seek truth, in a sense, but to get rid of all the barriers we have created, you know, between us and the truth. And the truth is not like something so transcendental. Like a truth that is not human is like literally like emptiness to the human being, has an empty value. Right? That means it's as if there could be dehumanized truth and there could be humanized truth. You know, let's say an alien in the future lands and the alien's truth is that it should be control our species. You know, that's a dehumanized truth. right? From a philosophical standpoint, right? So we have to, as a species, not only care for humanized truth, but honor the human archetype, as if humanity is an airport in the multidimensional space-time continuum. Just take that in. That if it's an airport, that means, or I would say, it's like being born on Earth is like you're automatically being a crew member of what Buckminster Fuller and Marshall McLuhan would call Spaceship Earth. We're all crew members of Spaceship Earth, but it's just that we have not found the captain, and the captain is the idea of the future that we all walk towards. And what are human beings doing? Like, I was, in The Simpsons, you see that guy who owns the nuclear factory, and you wonder about, like, what is that guy's, that kind of archetype, the evil elite archetype. It's like, where does that go karmically? And you see it karmically goes that a person shows that they are powerful. They even control the world and they show that they're powerful, but eventually they will realize the purpose of life is not power. The purpose of life is understanding and the allowance of the better future to arise. That means it's as if right now, I would say the potential of the future is in the present moment. That means everybody has a potential to pilot in a way where they experience turbulence, or pilot in a way where it's a smooth flight. That means the future exists as a potential now as we act in accordance to our inner realms and trust the intelligence of being, not the intelligence of a mind, because the concept of a mind is just a signpost. It's just an arrow pointing within. There was this movie called Kung Fu Hustle. It was a ridiculous movie, to be honest, but it was very profound in the sense that common people were like held a hidden martial art power. And to me, every human being is like an unknown potential activation of both inner realm and outer realm influence on the world, When I look at myself and how shy I was when I was young, and how shy I still am sometimes, but when I look at the shyness of my youth, there was no worth for self. That means children can feel worthless way quicker than a person who's lived, years of his life, And even as I speak, the biggest conflict would be that of how do we properly integrate cyberspace with a natural movement, like that's a bigger challenge. The era of cyberspace philosophy has not begun, but I think probably like potentially after 30 years or maybe 120 years, we will have potentially children born in cyberspace simulations without knowing they're actually born in a biological existence. And so philosophers will for the first time write books on children, like human beings reached a point in human history where they weren't like, is the world real or unreal? They were like, is this world digital or natural? Like that's in some sense 120 years philosophers are gonna have to deal with that. I feel that every generation is bestowed with a gift. That means this is like something strange. It's like what happens on if there was a saying like, what happens on a rock in the middle of nowhere? Random geometrical DNA, like random patterns of intelligence arise. Just take this in, guys. Like the sunlight hit the planet and evolution began. The most fundamental cells suddenly saw the light, you know. The potential of intelligence awoke. And think about this concept of cause and effect, this concept of karma, and generally any duality. That means if somebody was like, if we were to go and find the etymology of or let's say the derivative of the word of the concept of how would I say it? I'm pretty much just trying to say that light holds within it, this is my personal theory, light holds within itself geometrical imprints of intelligence. We could theoretically think that an advanced civilization can get so advanced in the future that it will make itself invisible, transparent. That transparent advanced civilization can never be destroyed. It's an immortal, let's say, civilization. So let's say a civilization got so advanced, in accordance to the Kardashev scale, it became type 1, it managed the energy of its planet. Type 2, it managed the energy of its sun. Type 3 civilization, it managed the energy of it, the whole galaxy, the star system, and beyond. And so, let's say a type 2 civilization arises. A type 2 civilization is a civilization that can fully access and use the sun, our current sun, as a technology. Let's say we're an advanced civilization that managed to access invisible technology, transparency, so that means it in some sense managed to pass the test of time. Now imagine this advanced civilization in another dimension decided that, all right, what we're going to do is we're going to use the sun as a broadcasting system for a genetical spark to be sent all over the universe. And any planet that has a potentially intelligent particle will hit the sun and in some sense move. Evolve, animate. So because I'm telling you, light is geometry. Sight is geometry. Whoever's listening to me right now, if there's a window beside you or you're outside, just look at a moment. Just stop moving and just look at the moment as if it's a painting on a wall. And you will notice how much detailed geometry and line work and coloring is in the sensory visual world. Right? It's as if everybody is a master level artist when it comes to their subconscious, because you have lived in the artwork of the world, you know, it's as if, like, if someone asks me, Mr. Within, where do you get your content? And I'll be like, yeah, so I open my eyes and I wonder what I'm seeing. And I have infinite access to content. The mystery of the world calls for the advanced communicators, you know. It's like time. It's literally like every species, an individualized species similar to, humanity, eventually will go into a phase where individuals, and like imagine 8 billion individuals in a room, in a house, and they're like, what are we doing here? And somebody's like, turn on the music, let's party. Right? Now that music needs to be the ethos of the advanced civilization. Why? Because it is the ultimate conclusion. I have thought about what can we do in front of our eyes so much, guys. Just as a species, like what can a human creature do in three-dimensional, or I should say fourth-dimensional space-time continuum. That means there's 3 dimensions in space, and then there's the dimension of time, right? And the story of the world, without time, we have no story. So our mind, without time, cannot individualize. Human beings have to find a way to survive. And their survival is no longer its definition just you were like a powerful gorilla that or like a powerful tiger on a hill. The approach of survival is we want to survive and use the opportunity of our 4.5 billion years of evolution to have a psychology and a civilized mind, and use that to do something, you know? That means in the future, if some human being tries to be evil, people are going to be like, you have the time to be evil in the void? Communication is an ancient art, of course. We are way more, like you can say, genetically, the DNA has way more comfort with expressing itself than, in some sense, hiding itself. That means we have way more experience directly experiencing life than we have classifying life through subjects and creating libraries in the void. You know, sometimes with you know, like you know how, like, you know, movies like Sopranos or like Godfather, they have like that Italian accent, you know? It's kind of like sometimes in my inner realms, it's as if I think of mysticism, or I think of language as if who had the balls, you know, to give a story to a multidimensional experience engine. Literally, it's this fascinating system of intelligence that sometimes it's so dynamic you can't give a shape to, and sometimes it's static enough for you to own a piece of the world in your mind before you realize it all is the world. That means it's the person's like, I imagine like a tyrant and a dictator became successful, and they're like, I own the world, and eventually after some point they're like, oh my god, I'm mortal, the world owns me. And what does that mean? Is that we are servants of the realm. And the ideology you choose what uniform or what Iron Man suit you step into, what archetype you step into. Like, for example, let's take this picture of this episode. I chose this picture intentionally. To me, the concept of royalty, the concept of honor, the concept of serving, you know, the conscious human empire. Like, there's something strange, because human beings, the more real their spectrum, their hierarchical value system is, I would say the more human we are, you know. It's like the more we honor the human being, the more strangely we're creating a karma of the world where the world honors us. That means, imagine if human beings began doing the opposite of what we're doing now. Just literally like flip. It's let's say it's called the you know, pancake flip towards world peace, you know. If everybody's being cruel right now, people are like, just do the opposite and see what happens to the karma of the moment, you know. People don't understand. We are here to see ourselves. That means the life begins as an individual game only. That means that when the child is being born, you know, it's like the child doesn't care about like politics or you know, the newborn child doesn't care about like climate change and all of this. It's just there just as an intelligent moment cultivating its personal dimension. And when children are told to play, why? Because as the consciousness has been introduced to the realm, it requires to, in some sense, be grounded in its body. You know, that means children should be active, right? So the educational system shouldn't be a freaking classroom, you know, where children are sitting in that classroom. The educational system should be an obstacle course, should be a ramp or something, right? Imagine in the future, children had to literally, the hallways of the school was like some next level, I don't want to say Navy SEALs level, but some next level, you know, safe and kind of playful obstacle course for children. And children in the morning had to climb to school, literally. Imagine universities in the future, they will be like the Colosseum, but the Colosseum would not have windows, and it would just be walls, and it would just be like for mountain climbers. Anybody who can climb, they can get into the school, you know. All that man can do is either accept the world or fight it till the end of time. And when we accept, something strange happens. When we accept whatever is going on, we get a chance to see it. That's the power of acceptance. The moment a person accepts something, it's as if it's like connection granted, you know. And so really what it is we want to polish the mirror of existence for future mystics. Human beings will eventually notice that we know nothing, that Jon Snow knows nothing, the species knows nothing. So when we don't fear the unknown, we actually enter the original Earth, which is unknown, an unknown state of being. It's not a location. Location is for just individualism, you know. It's like if when you get in the car, you access the car's features, you know. When you are born as an individual human being, you access dualistic perception of reality. And sometimes like contemplation is like the window vipers, I think that's what they're called, the windshield, you know. In this picture, you know what I see? I see the victorious. And victory means that we all partake in a singular achievement. That means the victory of an advanced civilization in the future. There's going to be no shortcoming of victories. In the future, you're going to turn on TV, you're just going to, I don't know, probably have glasses where the TV is everywhere, you know. But let's say you turn on the TV, some medium, and you begin to see every channel is literally, the news is no longer about what's the messed up stuff that happened on the planet. The news is only about today in this part of the world they achieved this, today in that part of the world they achieved this, they advanced this, they advanced that. Every day you just turn on the TV and you're like, no way, so many things are advancing in the world that we didn't know. I would say, if I was to say the levels of human beings, and this is not, don't take this as an absolutist view what I'm saying, but I'm just saying, like, if I was to categorize human beings in 3 dimensions, I would say those who are in the 100% known, those who are in the 100% unknown, and those who are between the known and the unknown. That means semi-known, semi-unknown. Now what happens is, this is actually a diamond model. What that means is, when you look at the geometry, so imagine a square, now tilt the square, let's say 90 degrees. And so when you look at the geometry of that diamond, you will notice in some sense that one point at the top of the hierarchy, one absolute point at the bottom of the hierarchy, then they go into 2 angles, right? So it's literally like a dolphin, you know, jumping between, you know, up, like, you know, from the water and then back into the water. We have dolphin-like consciousness, guys, you know. But what it is I'm saying that you have the extreme archetype of the 100% known. This is Carl Jung termed this as the collective unconscious, a great discovery for the intellect of mankind. And so the other is, so there's the completely unknown moment and the completely known moment, and then in between there is the dualism of, in some sense, the known unknown and the unknown known. And that state which is unknown known, those are human beings who have understood their presence beyond their personality. That state where it's the known unknown, that's the personality still trying to contain the unknown. It's as if we're a little part of the picture trying to fit the whole picture into that little part of the picture, rather than realizing all microcosmic findings are within a macrocosmic event. The universe is so ahead of us. And the sounds of our world cannot be ignored. Poetry is like the last stance before we turn into just calculation-based robots. It's as if the poets are like rebelling now. 2021 is like where creativity is like enough. And creatives are finding the global stage. That's how it should be. The global humanity. That means in one of my science fiction. In the science fiction novel I'm working on, in the future I've seen a civilization where for the first time there is no how would I say it? It's as if everything once seen as artwork, it's as if, imagine world leaders, the first politician that became an artist, the first artist that went into politics, and this artist was like, I don't care, I just want the nation to look beautiful, to look incredible in everyone, right? And so imagine one nation started to actually focus on the quality of the lives of the citizen and realize that is where the greatest business is, where it's a win-win. Power systems, they in some sense fail the moment they forget that it's a collective event here. Anytime you think that it's only one story to rule them all, you become like Lord of the Rings. The ring starts possessing you, and you look at your belief system and you say, my precious belief system. You become like you dehumanize, into a strict belief. But I will tell you, a bird uses both of its wings at the same time to fly. That means with an appreciation of the known and the unknown, if you live, I will tell you, at least the world will honor your peace. It's as if in the outer realms, all that we can really expect is just peaceful intelligence that has an advanced destination. In the inner realms, as the famous poet T.I. says, you can say whatever you like. When it comes to the inner realms, it's just you are presence. Presence is nothing to be afraid of. Everything in this life has a presence. Every person's consciousness has a presence. There is no comparison. It's as if, how do you compare two different universes? You cannot. So a third universe is required. And then, so that means it's as if we're 8 billion individuals, each in their own sphere of a reality, right? And the moment we somehow step out of that sphere and we recognize the greater spheres of intelligence, right, then it's as if it becomes incredible. It becomes a sort of honor. That means we're going to start seeing the speeches of all human beings on this earth begin taking the macrocosm into consideration, as if, wait, there is a billion trillion stars in our universe, and we're here suffering over spilled milk. Like, it's as if when the Milky Way galaxy is like above our heads, the world is so vast that a person cannot fail, because it's its endless initiation. Energy, it's like energy's purpose in life is like, buddy, I'm energy, I gotta express, and the ego is like, okay, so, the psychology administers. Universal honor. honor will begin. Human beings will only judge their future when they get there. And the judgment of the past will stop. The judgment of the present will stop. People, I could totally see it's as if like, imagine a child asks their parent, like, why are we all here? And the parent's like, oh my God, what do I say to this kid? And the answer is that you say it's a question for all of us. Honesty is the greatest sign that we trust our world. The dishonest, they don't trust their outer realms. That's why, I think it was Aristotle, he said when you lie, you create another simulation of yourself where you have to remember, So that means liars, they are in some sense, internally extremely tired. But if a person looks at what's just there as just the presence of reality, and then from the simple you begin going towards the complex rather than starting right from the complex, then the pilot can in some sense navigate the consciousness consciously. It's like consciously be consciousness. And it's all about not how we just accept people, because people are characters in a story, right? So like, let's say, a person A meets person B. Person B is a character in person B's universe, and let's say in universe B, innerverse B. And let's say person A is all in their own A universe, They are in innerverse A, let's say. And so when person A and person B speak, they have to be willing to at first share how their inner verses look like, and then have the willingness to co-create a world that both innerverse and universe, innerverse A and innerverse B are kind of being added. So what that means is it's like A is alone, B is alone, A plus B. A new reality. It's as if the cells in our body have to have a faith in what we're being, and we as the sort of God of our biology, the decision maker of it, are kind of like we have to play our part. The victory of humanity is the most advanced opportunity of every conscious access point to the world. It's like simply said, the best result is if everybody does their best. So every person starting from their inner realms has to begin approaching their inner realms in the best manner they know. And once they approach the inner realms, they, in some sense, it's as if like once you're done with your own world, then the world of others becomes interesting. Valerie says, I try to see the good in everyone. Is that bad? Let me tell you, it's bad. It's that whatever type of good you do, it's only good because you have a reference point of bad. It's as if the only way we know that there is light is because there is darkness. And when the light has an the photons enter the darkness, then it's as if like the meaning changes. So if you're trying to be a good person, you cannot ignore the bad. Both have to coexist. So you're keeping the bad in the universe by being a good person, just as an egoic archetype, okay? But if instead of trying to be a good person or a bad person, the person was like, okay, that it's just good and bad is a dualistic system. Its geometry is dualistic. It's literally the yin-yang symbol, So it's as if saying, as long as you want to stay in the yin-yang symbol, if you want to stay in duality, being a good person is a great way of keeping yourself in duality, Being a good person or even being a bad, those people who are like, I'm going to be an evil, diabolical, evil person, like in movies or whatever, right? Even that's keeping the good. That means the evil person can never get rid of good, and the good person can never get rid of bad. It's hilarious, This is what Alan Watts called polar thinking. A very important dualism. To me, instead of a person having to choose between right or wrong, I'm just saying instead of the concept, having to choose between the one, we make the context multidimensional. Do you see? That means a person can to others be doing something wrong, but to themselves they thought they were doing something right? And a person could be doing something wrong, but to others they're like, yo, he's doing something right, That means right and wrong are subjective angles of looking at an object, looking at the consequence of an object, right? So right and wrong I'm telling you, instead of trying to be good and bad like a robot, zero wanting it out, instead of doing that, just realize how multidimensional the landscape is and what are the actual unknown variables, right? That means it's as if when, when the intellectual community avoids the unknown, it shackles the future generations to the past. That means it's as if like the future deserves its own eyes, its own exploration. All that we can do is just suggest something. We could be like, hey future, don't destroy yourself, and the future's like, all right, Mr. Within, I got you, Humanity is elemental theater, animated by the spotlight of awareness. When we realize the mind is actually a sort of simultaneous quality of space. That means like if somebody said, hey, Mr. Within, what does the mind look like? I'll be like, it looks like the space where all physical phenomenology is in. Do you know what I mean? The mind is like the whole room, right? And the body is what's in the room. Now we're identifying with something specific in the moment of our mind, in the room of our conscious mind. Now I'm saying the moment you realize there's unknown variables, your shackles, your chains to absolute destiny of one idea kind of break. For the first time, you become so free that there is no concept of freedom or the absence of it. It's just something is happening. My one of my parents asked me one day, like, what is my philosophy in the world? And I gave such a strange answer. I told them that it's all just a great happening. Something great is happening. Something universally great is happening, right? And we're just like riding the wave as a surfer. That means the surfer cannot act like an ocean. This is why I'm saying, like, be human first, then whatever. The idea is that we are also, as a conscious being in the space-time continuum, doing a scan of which archetype provides the most energetic expression, right? That means in these talks, if I just talk about the past, I'm going to become very sad, I'm just going to be like, oh man, look at all the mistakes we made, But if I look at the future, I'll be like, oh my god, look at all the right things we did, and they were right in the sense that they were new. That means novelty requires to be honored. And I believe it was Einstein where he said genius is bridging two worlds that have nothing to do with one another. That means there are so many ways that knowledge is being experienced and knowledge is actually being. And how knowledge is being experienced is a limited approach, Then in some sense, like I'm saying, like pretty much we're someone who's looking in a box, and I'm saying instead of us looking at a box with limited stuff in it, we take our head out of the box and then wonder about what it means to enter life as an idea, Because the whole point is we don't want students till the end of time. That would be so messed up, Imagine, aliens land and they're like, what are you human beings doing? And we're like, we're students that take good notes. The extraterrestrials will get on their ship and be like, these human beings haven't understood their creative universal freedom. We are all explorers. We're just, the eyes of the world accessing it. It's honestly like the world is looking at us like a mirror. You look in a mirror and you see your reflection. You look at the individual human being in a collective system world and you see it's the whole world being the human, right? It's as if the person's like, I can't tell if I'm being the whole universe right now or I'm being just me right now. We have in the New Age community people who are like channeling aliens. I'll be like, imagine someone's like, hey guys, I am channeling the Andromeda galaxy. And they'll be like, excuse me, you're channeling a galaxy? And the person's like, yeah, the whole galaxy. It's like the person who, channeled, the universe. It's like, what is the universe saying? The universe is saying you can say whatever you want. Man, guys, I try to be serious in these talks, but our existential circumstance is so silly. It's like temporary beings who have access to an infinite universe. It's like, give me a break, reality. The best thing we can say is that the species doesn't know anything, and in every I would say in every generation that carries a paradigm of will, of how their free will is being conditioned, it's as if now for the first time we don't, what it is, it's like there is this whole superhero kind of villain archetype thing going on, but I'll tell you, we need multidimensional designers. They are the true guardians of the future. Just like, what was it like, in the movie Thor, that incredible character who was like holding the sword, shielding Asgard, and who could scan the universe. It's as if that's like, who the advanced communicators are going to be. We're going to be, the human intelligence that for the first time cared for human intelligence, and we were honest with it. That means, imagine a student asks a psychology professor, what's the mind? And the psychology professor says, yes, the mind is this and that. And the student's like, I was expecting you to just be honest and be like, we don't know yet, but these are our findings, It's all like just the human brain. It's just a storytelling engine. Now, this storytelling engine is watched when you have lived as an object, and let's say you've consciously lived as a subject, right? And you've consciously lived as a subject, so you reach a certain point where you are like, I have noticed how all objective phenomena is being in my moment. And then you're like, I have noticed all inner realm subjective phenomena, how it's being in my moment. And I have noticed before there being a conditioned language system, it's just energy being. Right? That means anybody who can be content with the universe has become content with the self that heaven will allow. You know, if you're a religious person, you should be like, oh my God, everything is God. You know, if you're a secular person, you should be like, oh my God, everything is the potential of the human mind. We honor how rare it is for us to be conscious. We literally are the species that got the golden ticket, you know, to poetically, you know, a galactic setting. You know, like who knows? Maybe in like 600 years or way more, in the, let's say in 1,000 years, we've pretty much gone like and become interstellar as a species, and still animals and birds and squirrels, they haven't evolved. They're just in their own level, right? Just by the chance that there could be reincarnation, we have to begin shielding animal, like literally animal rights. If you perceive the human as an evolutionary animal, it has to become like human rights is an animal right, technically, if you're looking at it from just a biological standpoint, right? So it's as if, why is it that we are the only animal that gets universal rights, but no other animal gets universal rights, you know? This is going to be a domain of philosophy where human beings are going to wonder about the psychology of the human archetype, just how the human archetype can be projected within anything, right? We have animators that in shows make inanimate objects come alive and talk, right? In children's shows and whatnot, you know. So objects can be personified, subjects can be personified, the universe can be personified. And eventually the only thing that cannot be personified is emptiness. And this is what the Buddha noticed. The nature of objective phenomena is empty, and when you realize the nature of subjective phenomena is empty, that's when you have stepped into nirvana. The sky city of the inner realm is the concept of enlightenment, brother. And honestly, like I think every human being deep down is like, what kind of world do I want to see? A world where human beings are advanced and able? Or a world where we never got the chance to see how far we could go. I mean, that's like the biggest regret. That means imagine all those human beings who are like, all right, Mr. Within, you know, let's see how far human beings can go. Let's live for the advanced civilization. Let's see what's going to happen with that. And let's say in doing so, we get to a point where we see we are finding ourselves in a world where, due to emotional and instinctual reasons and biological habitual reasons, the species is like, do you see what I mean? It's as if people are living in an emotional paradigm of psychology. Very emotionally turbulent paradigm of psychology. In the future, once the geometry of thought and emotion is separated, emotion is like you become emotional when a noun becomes a verb. And when a verb becomes a noun, you in some sense are moving towards the intellect, towards the shape of the moment being the justification of what the moment is, rather than, emotions being a sort of sudden teleportation from one thought to a potential consequence or whatnot. And here's the thing. I remember having a discussion in the Discord community a while back, and there was this whole idea of it was as if this idea had come that was challenging the advanced civilization idea. So I'm this person who is saying that we should all build an advanced civilization here, but someone had challenged me and said, hey, Mr.Within, if we say this world is samsara and you want to build an advanced civilization in samsara, isn't the better thing for people just to get enlightened and get out of here? So that was the challenge, right? And that's when I said, in some sense, the way I'm perceiving it, is really that why are we in the human form, right? It's as if imagine one day you woke up and there was a tool in your hand. Imagine one day you woke up and you realize there's a violin in your hand, and you're like, where did this violin come from? And so what can you do with a violin in your hand? You can only use it, right? So I'm saying, what can human beings do with their physical lives? They can use it as whatever they are. Right? Now, I'm saying we are already living in a certain way physically. All we gotta do is just make the future a bit more important than our past. Because we don't have a conscious kind of allegiance of all human minds in the universal sector right now. It's as if the past is telling us what to do. The moment we realize we are the ones alive now, that's when creativity is when you realize the opportunity of life, of a lifetime, is not in consciousness, it is consciousness. And that's the thing, our inner realms, look at this picture of this wallpaper right now that I've chosen for this episode. It's a perfect explanation of what I'm trying to say. All these soldiers that have raised their swords in the air after returning home victorious from battle, as if very few of them died, as they all raised their swords into the air, you know what it is? This is a victory celebration of a kingdom that has surrendered to this kingdom, and the army hasn't gone to war yet, maybe. You can say Mr. Within's approach to all mental illness on the surface of the planet. It's about if the person is defeated by their inner realms or they're defeated by their outer realms. That means mental illness arrives. It's another way of saying a bird that's not flapping its wings at the same time. The inner realm and outer realm are not in sync. So a person who in some sense is oblivious, let's say I went to film school in downtown Toronto, and as a smoker, I would find myself just observing Dundas Square, and I can tell you all the different kinds of human psychology I saw there was mind-boggling. It's as if I remember seeing someone shout at a building wall, and I was just smoking my cigarette, being like, what is that? How do I understand what that is? And I realized that's a person caught in their inner realms. They have been defeated so much in the outer realms that they have no choice. It's as if they have been rejected by the outer realms, so they have to endure in their inner realms. And unless they realize, that the outer realms is our birthright, in other words, a person who's defeated in the inner realms That means they are trying to ignore the outer realms because they don't know how to engage it. A lot of mental illness can just be ignorance of nature. So let's say we have a person. Okay, here, I'll say it like this. Let's say we have four kinds of people. We have a person who in their, just a second guys, I'm trying to write this down here. 1, 2, 3, 4. Okay, there we go. So imagine we have a person where in their inner realms they are victorious, and in the outer realms they're victorious. These are usually like the commanders of the living realm. You know, those beings who are internally and externally victorious. Life takes them to where their energy can serve. So we have a person who their inner realms, outer realms is victorious. Or here, I'll start from the other way. We have a person, let's say, who their inner realms, okay, whatever. First person, inner realm victorious, outer realm victorious. Second person, inner realm victorious, outer realm defeated. Third person, inner realm defeated, outer realm victorious. Fourth person, inner realm defeated, outer realm defeated. There are four types of people I would classify, all like that. This is a bold statement, but right now I think I've found the perfect model to observe all human psychology. It's as if I found a model to connect, to classify all the possible relationships of the physiology and the psychology with the physiology. So let's say you're a person who your inner realms and outer realms are victorious. This is kind of like, let's say, kind of like Buddha. You know, Buddha, Gautama Siddhartha, he was the child of an emperor, you know, and for most of his life he doesn't suffer in his youth, and then like as I don't know if he was a teenager or whatever age he was, he escapes the simulation of the being inside the palace where all his every desire is met, so he doesn't ask a question. And Siddhartha steps out of the palace and for the first time begins seeing people get old, you know, people get sick, you know, people die, you know, people suffer. So he understands, holy shit, the biological entity is suffering in the universe, right? And then he dedicates his whole life to figure out why is there suffering, and is there a way out, or is there something we can do about it? And that becomes the legendary Eightfold Path of Buddhism. So Buddha is an example of someone where his inner realms his outer realms were victorious. He was the child of an emperor. Come on, and and then we have in regards to inner realms, you know, he was victorious because he found a way to respond to the inevitable. He found a way, and they say the Dharma is like a raft which takes you across the simulation samsara. You know, so if Buddha was someone trying to escape a simulation, he built a boat. So Buddha is an example of inner realm victorious, outer realm victorious. Then we have example of someone where their inner realm is victorious and outer realm they're defeated. This is the example of like the hidden genius, you know, where the genius is, in some sense, it's as if all those important people in history where we know their important result, but we don't know who they ever were, like they were avoided, right? That means it's like genius sometimes is like in a desert, you know, and there's no more water if there's no attention from any other mind, you know what I mean? It's like so I would say like Nikola Tesla is an example of someone where in his inner realm he was victorious, in his outer realm I don't want to say he was defeated because he could have felt it was victorious, but I'm saying it was as if how history remembers him, his outer realm was defeated. That means he could have lived better in the outer realms, you know. And I think we all can relate to that. I think everybody's like, yeah, I could have existed better yesterday in a completely different way. So then we have a type of person where their outer realms is victorious and their inner realms is defeated. This is unfortunately in our modern era in 2021, this is what's happening. This is what the artificial society is taking people into an archetype of, right? Where people in the outer realms are showing as if, yeah, man, take a look at my Lamborghini and my library, But actually, what is the illusion of victory in the outer realms? In an inner realms is a defeated soul, right? Because it has nothing to do with what you have or don't have when it comes to the inner realms. It's how your attitude simulates the world for you. This is why those who are ignorantly cruel, their karma is literally an ignorant cruelty comes and consumes them. That means it's as if you cannot input a sort of program into the system of life through your thoughts and not expect a result, right? The world would be like as if the logos is like, okay, we got a new message in our inbox, and then the cosmos celebrates because man for the first time has inquired. Beyond the senses, the world perhaps turns in ways that mathematics may explain, but our eyes will never agree. So an example of the individual, I'll tell you, an individual inner realm defeated or outer realm victorious. I would say it is the liar. The liar archetype is the one where in the outer realm it has attained victory. In the inner realms, you have in some sense been conquered already by your own ignorance. And then we have the individual in society where their inner realm is defeated and their outer realm is defeated. And this was what I perceived in Dundas Square in Toronto. Human psychology that had reached a point where it's as if the human being had not been behaved towards as a human being by society, so they had stopped caring for themselves as a human being, right? And when you stop caring for yourself as a human being in the inner realms, when you allow yourself to dehumanize in the inner realms, it's very easy to be artificially justifying violence. So those who, the moment there is symptoms, let's say, or there is signs, that the inner realm is being defeated, the person has two options, right? The airplane is about to crash. What do? And I'm talking about something in philosophy and psychology, guys. In no way is this topic, what I'm saying is like you're listening to a philosopher, keep that in mind. So when it comes to the individual defeat, anytime we see a sign our inner realms are defeated, let's say there was a human being who was very energetic throughout the day and somebody comes and speaks to them in a way where it's as if their whole attitude, their whole energy level comes down, right? Imagine a child is playing and for no reason the parent shouts at the child, it's as if it's as if the inner realm of the child can feel defeated, right? And we may think like in today's civilization, children are, the new generations, Gen Z or whatever it is, they're like soft and they have forgotten the world, hiding in cyberspace. But I'll tell you, it's not. What the case is that the new generations is literally like the movie Sparta, where the Spartans threw their kid into the forest and they're like, only when you kill a wolf with a spear ball jumping into the air backwards is when you will be my son. And the kid had no comment, just as if, okay, he wants to see something proven. Anytime the inner realms are feeling defeated, what tends to happen? The person prays in a religious context. And if not in a religious context, the person goes towards help or some sort of help finds them, right? The idea is the inner realms are your own karma, and karma is cause and effect. That means what we experience behind our eyes is our doing. It's not our doing, it's our reception of whatever is happening, whether it's by us or not. So when the inner realms are defeated, the pilot ejects out of the airplane, out of the plane of existence, or the pilot lands the plane and then gets out of the plane and gets into a better airplane. Right? So what that means is, in the inner realms, it's like the witness within is not an object or subject to be defeated. It's just watcher. It's as if energy has no opinion, and then the mind's like, all right, energy, help me with this, help me with that, and then energy's going that way. You know what I mean? So those who in their outer realms may appear victorious, but in their inner realms are defeated, we have to be careful, because that is where the dictators and tyrants come out of. That psychology. But also from that psychology, greatness comes too, right? There's been, like, Martin Luther King saw universal adversity and he shouted and the world heard his voice, So you see, adversity is not bad if we're smart enough to do something about it. It becomes a chapter in our history, as if we wrote that part of the novel of humanity, but how will the future chapters be written, and how much do the future generations even care about where the world is going? It's like we're all on this giant ship, and this ship is just going in unknown waters, and it's as if, like, as if we are not caring for the collective destination. We're not caring for our collective destiny. There we go. And when you stop caring for the collective destiny, your psychology allows itself to become defeated. That means you are as defeated as you stop trying. I mean, how many Rocky movies do we need to see to understand this? That what it really makes the human being successful is not that it knows what to do all the time, but that it has an effort to keep going, and as it keeps going, eventually, dimensions of experience cultivate, and then they build up, And so simplicity, gives birth to complexity all the time. Guys, there's this company called Studio Ghibli in Japan, in Tokyo, Kogane, Tokyo, and its founder is Hayao Miyazaki. And Hayao Miyazaki is this legendary, animator, where there was this film he created, this concept he created, called Spirited Away. And in this film, you find the archetype of innocence being confronted by the archetype of chaos, and the innocence is so true to itself that the chaos doesn't know what to do. Do you know? That means it's as if, imagine, like the Buddha, there's a saying that, it's not a saying, it's like something that happened to the Buddha was when he had sat by the tree, when he had sat by the Bodhi tree and he was in his meditation, right before opening his eyes in his complete enlightenment, it is said that behind Buddha's eyes, these three demon sisters, the sisters of Mara, if I remember correctly, these three sisters shoot at him literally like a sky of arrows, And the moment in his inner realms, like Buddha's just sitting by a tree meditating, but in his realms, the three archetypes, these three demonic archetypes appear and they shoot like a wave of arrows at Buddha. And what Buddha does is he has found totally understood peace and is the nature of the free will, and instantly all the arrows in the inner realms coming from the sisters of Mara, they turn into lotus flowers and they fall down, as if Buddha had understood the inner realm is man's domain. Your mind is your space. When you understand it, your intelligence activates. if we don't care for collective victory, we have given to the boredom of a mind that can envision more. You know, it's incredible. It's not that the eyes are in our world, you know, the eyes are receiving the world. Sight is the world. And it's like what is moving in sight is the soul, is the Atma. Beyond the dualism of space and matter, it's as if that which is perceiving both is all. You know, at some point in the mystical search of the mystic, the sadhu will come to a point and it'll be like, oh my God, where have I been looking for truth for? You know, and the sadhu, the moment he says, where have I been looking for truth, it's a suggestion that truth is the one looking. So anything it looks at, it can be true, and that's how human beings are functioning. So this requires that in order to advance civilization, we should have such an advanced system that incorporates all systems. And in order for all systems to be able, imagine if 8 billion human beings were like, yeah, why not? Let's give a gift to our civilization, to the future generations, and we all start building backup systems and advanced civilizations, or prototypes at least. That should be a question where, like, every university student can't graduate without, like, responding to the future challenges of the species, you know. The educational system is it's like the educational system is a lion that is acting like a sheep. And when the lion looks into the mirror, attention is the source of the world. That is the finale. That is when presence is understood. And multidimensionality, it's, you know what it is? It's as if, imagine a very poetic kind of, imagine human beings were like a balloon and the air inside was like the consciousness. Right? So imagine a balloon suddenly popping and the consciousness returning to the air, and the consciousness realizing it was only the biological body that was making it individual to the whole system. Right? So once we go into the domain where there is no individual and it's all a collective movement, this is where trust is very important, and how you have known your mind is also important. Right? Because the inner realms has content. That means a person can open their eyes. Let's say you're in a movie theater. You open your eyes and you see the screen. Now let's say you close your eyes, you hear the sound of the movie. You can't see the movie, but in your inner realms you could visualize what's happening in the movie. You know, guys, one day in the future, I'm gonna go find a place to live that is right beside a railroad, beside an airport, beside a highway, and beside the sea, you know. So when I give a podcast, you know, we have to respond, you know. That's the only, I think, the purpose of life. If it was like a puzzle, it's like, why are we existing as biological individuals, right? Like, why are we even individual? Why are 8 billion biological individuals in, like, the same server, right? Why have 8 minds connected to the same server, entered the same server, right? So we are, again, I use this metaphor, we are in an elemental video game, and we are being a player, and this player in the video game has chosen the realm and found itself in a world, elemental, let's say, video game world. But the only issue is there is no quest in the map. And because there is no quest, no great quests in the map, the character and the story of the world doesn't know what to do, you know? And it's like, said, through the scientific voice. That nature is like a vacuum. And you know what's hilarious? If a meteor, let's say like the movie Armageddon, if a meteor was about to hit Earth, it's only the human beings who care. Like the squirrels and the birds are like, oh yeah, whatever. All the animal species are like, all right, human beings, you got this. We're just gonna keep being whatever we are genetic, just listen to our biological expressions. For me, when something is too easy, it makes me want to look around more to see what else there is than accept whatever I see. And every person has to honor their mind, right? But the way you honor it is that you serve your own intelligence. Serving your own intelligence is another way of saying creative expression. And when you realize nobody knows, that's an incredible moment where people realize the value of exploration in the world. Anyways, guys, thank you for listening. And when humanity's eyes flew together, I mean, what else can I say? We're either envisioning the future that the here and now has, like we have access to as an archetypal, egoic construct in the moment. It's either we create a bridge to the future, or we forget the future and let the past, possess the present. It's as if literally the advanced communicators of the future generations, they're gonna be like guardians of the minds of children. What that means is, for the first time, we're going to care for the quality of life the person is living behind their eyes, not just raise the standard of living, of the quality of the outer life. We raise the standard of how we hold the human idea on this earth to a next level, Because I'm telling you, what greater poetry is there? It's as if like a voice shouted in the void and its echo became civilizations. So anyways, guys, thanks for listening. I hope this episode was helpful. And every moment, if there is a defeat, the moment there is a defeat, the person can know the opposite is victory. So anything. That means it's as if, let's say you're a person, you're about to do a decision, you're about to do something. So what can the mind do inside the dualistic framework? Inside the dualistic framework, the mind could be like, what is the best thing I can do? What is the worst thing I can do? Right? Like, that means in every moment. That means, imagine there's a cup of coffee in front of the person, and the person's like, what's the best thing I can do? What's the worst thing I can do? And then they just chuck the cup of coffee. It's just like, people care for their pets, people care for their plants, if only people cared for their civilization. Cared to live, cared to, carry what our ancestors have, sent forward into the space-time continuum. That means if we behave like our ancestors are like freaking out in their graves, that means their souls are being dishonored if we act like them. But if we act like the new opportunity we have access to as human beings, and rather try to be a human being that the world has never seen before, rather than be a good person or a bad person based on what good and bad is through the memory known as, it's like every moment the soul can give a command to the mind that makes the body realign. Do you know? That means it's as if it has that. This is why they say a spiritual experience or some sort of transformation. I think that's a better way of saying a transformational kind of experience is like very necessary in this evolutionary animal to shift gears in psychology. And what that means is, just like a manual car, where as your foot is on the gas pedal, you got to eventually change the gears as the speed of the car, as there's more pressure on the engine, right? Our psychology follows a similar model. Instead of erasing instead of being an inferior self behind our eyes and trying to do superior things in the outer realms, we should consider that in behind our eyes we are superior beings, in front of our eyes we're inferior beings. That way we have humility in the outer realms. But behind our eyes, the ego can stand as the king of any throne or the queen of any throne. Sorry guys, I was writing something down. One last thing to say. When it comes to a state that is internally victorious and externally victorious, this means the human being is like, the best thing I could do in the outer realms is to advance civilization. The best thing I can do in the inner realms is to advance communication. In the inner realms, the complete advancement of communication is self-realization, and in the outer realms, the complete advancement is in some sense contributing to the momentum of trying to make every part of civilization efficient. That means, imagine like in the future there was an AI, and this AI could build an advanced civilization, and the incredible minds that in the future were like, all right, let's do this, and they release this AI, and this AI somehow scans all over the planet all the systems that are happening and presents to that incredible community of people who presented the AI all the better probabilities that things can be done, right? So if AI begins building an advanced civilization from us, it has to look at every corner of civilization. Now, right now, human beings are opening their eyes in every corner of civilization. So if in every corner of civilization, the archetype of the advanced, conscious, collectively graceful human being is being promoted, right? Eventually, we will have a world of non-ideologically possessible heroes. It's as if the same way all the people in this picture are, raising their hand to the moment. Similarly, we gotta start celebrating every moment of human life. A world where there has never been an opportunity for 8 billion individual minds to collectively, consciously harmonize and advance. It's like right now, all I can say is we have such a rare opportunity to do something that no other life form can do. It's as if the human species is literally piloting in a way where no other species is. Most species are being piloted. We are the only species that can pilot itself, and not completely, only certain dimensions. Like we can't, like if we say every person is made of elements in the periodic table, like we can't suddenly relocate all these elements in the periodic table by just the nature of our will, right? But we can raise our hand in the air and be like, victory! You know? And really, it's like the continuity of the species is the greatest project on Earth, you know? It's advancement. Anyways, guys, thanks for listening. This was a long episode. Namaste.